Syria has rejected the charges of crimes against humanity levelled yesterday by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navi Pillay. The Syrian regime's crackdown has lately centred on the central city of Homs, which has been under a relentless barrage of shells, mortars and rocket-propelled grenades for 10 days now. Supporters of the Syrian government in Australia say this is a legitimate suppression of the political opposition. And last week we heard from Robert Bakazi, an organiser of the pro-Assad rallies, who warned the uprising has been hijacked by Sunni fundamentalists, backed by Saudi Arabia and with the acquiescence of the US.
It's being presented as a Hollywood-inspired good versus evil battle. The situation in Syria is a lot more complicated than the easy sell of a dictator versus his people who want freedom. The Americans just want Assad and his government out. What comes afterwards is the least of their concern. 1 million dead Iraqis, millions of widows and orphans, 2 million Christians, now barely numbering 150,000. Is this democracy? Who's accountable for what happened there? Who's going to be accountable when the same thing happens in Syria?
That's Robert Bakazi. But for some Syrians, as horrific as the prospect of a sectarian civil war may be, the Arab Spring must extend to Syria with the removal of the Assad regime. In his second report, this time with opponents of the Assad regime, James Carleton attended a recent meeting of the Australian Syrian Association.
In the main street of Lakemba in southwestern Sydney, a small business next to the pub has been converted into the fledgling headquarters of the Australian resistance to the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Everyone in the room has a story to tell of family members jailed or killed. Yet Yusuf, his family in Syria, so he doesn't want his surname used, is optimistic. The momentum for change has become unstoppable.
We've had enough poverty, corruption, oppression, humiliation. I mean, who would detain 15-year-olds at the school just because they wrote some slogans on a school wall? Who would do that? Who would mutilate children's penises? Who would pull out their nails and hair and eyes? And it's just heinous. If I keep going on, you will not take it. I mean, they have doctors supervising the torture.
And what's your name?
My name is Muhammad Al-Burmawi. I'm from Daraa.
That's where the revolution began.
That's where the revolution started, yeah. Just my cousin I think 4 weeks ago. He shot in the head, 16 years old. We lost him. The protest was coming in from his house, close to his house, and he went join them and they shoot him.
And what do you want to see happen in Syria?
Freedom and democracy and justice.
And what's your name?
My name is Qutayba. I'm from Homs. I'm calling for international community to interfere, and I think Assad regime will not collapse without any military intervention. We have been through operation now since 1963, and I'm wondering why the Western countries were very fast to interfere in Libya, but not in Syria.
The people at the pro-Syria, the pro-Assad rally were saying, Assad, sure, he's made a lot of mistakes, but an overthrow would be much worse.
No, I don't believe in that. There's no sectarian in my country, and the Syrian people are aware of their rights.
They say that's because of Assad, and the uprising is an Islamist takeover, which will see the genocide of the minorities.
Well, he's just trying to hide what his father did in Hama back in 1982, when they killed over 40,000 people in Hama. But now we have the media, we have Facebook, we have people who are educated, who are able to get the message across to the outside world. There's no Islamism in my country. All people, Christians, Jews, Muslims, they live together, peace, side by side. That's what we want. In Syria, the regime started inciting sectarian rifts between minorities and especially encouraging the Christians to say, oh, if our regime goes, you're going to get Islamic extremist regime like Saudi Arabia or whatever. We don't want a strictly religious country. We want a civil state ruled by the law, secular in the long run.
But that view is not shared by all opponents of the regime. At a Sydney rally against Assad, organised by Hizb ut-Tahrir, the call was for Assad's secular rule to be replaced with a revived pan-Islamic caliphate under Sharia law. And what you're about to hear took place not in Damascus, but Paul Keating Park, 3 weeks ago, with black jihadi flags unfurled. It's Bankstown, suburban Sydney, and the speaker is a 7-year-old boy.
My dear respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam, I would love to give a message to the tyranny of Bashar. Oi Bashar, does your eyes not see? Oi Bashar, does your ears not hear? Your time has finished. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give victory to the Muslim Ummah, inshallah.
Let the Assad regime, let Bashar al-Assad know Allah has promised his ending, and his ending will be, inshallah, worse than the ending of the Gaddafi. It's not about if, it's about when.
It's because of talk like that that many Syrian Christians, and Muslims too for that matter, fear what a post-Assad Syria may bring. 15 minutes drive from that rally, back to Lakemba, they also oppose Assad, yet they say Syrians of all backgrounds and religions are among their number. And while the Australian Syrian Association spoke at that rally, they do not share the Islamist philosophy of Hizb ut-Tahrir. But neither are they in a position to renounce their support. Remember the dark days of apartheid. Nelson Mandela was helped by Gaddafi and Castro, yet who could deny his democratic credentials today? But is it naive to think that Syria could become a democracy free from religious violence? Not at all, says Mohammed al-Barmawi, because while the revolution began outside the mosque in his hometown of Daraa, the protesters, shot by police, were cared for in the ancient town's church.
The fourth day of the revolution, we lost 70 people, and the church helped us to save a lot of people at that time. You know, we have no problem with the Christian or with Alawi, with the good Alawi people. They are our brothers. We lived in that land for so many years. We are the old civilization in the world.
And there's more recent evidence of peaceful coexistence.
I need to remind all the Syrian minorities to have a look at the pre-Assad period.
The period between French colonialism and the Ba'ath-Assad rule.
The Prime Minister at that time was a Christian for us, and all of us, we support him and love him. Farsil Khuli, his name.
You'd be happy for another democratically elected Christian?
Sure, if he's good to run the country, why not?
But the fear is Syria's fate won't be in the hands of people like that. It may not even be in the hands of Syrians. Yusuf once again.
There is an outside influence from Hezbollah, there is an outside influence from Iran, from Iraq. All those propagandas being spread by Manar, which is TV run by Hezbollah, which is a staunch ally of the Assad regime.
And indeed there are reports of Iran's Ayatollah Ali Khamenei sending oil and snipers to help suppress the uprising. So much for Assad's devotion to secularism. On the pro-uprising side, the bedfellows are stranger still. America and Australia want regime change. So too does Al-Qaeda. In the latest video from Ayman al-Zawahiri, bin Laden's successor. Weapons and jihadis flow in across the border to fight Assad from Lebanon, Iraq and Turkey, with money from Qatar and Saudi Arabia, the sworn enemies of Al-Qaeda. Though in this case, for the time being at least, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
That's James Carleton reporting. It's 10 minutes to 8.